An architectural discussions meeting, and Daniel, can you start from your topic?
He cannot hear you, so bear with
He
him.
cannot.
No, he's trying to solve his issue.
Okay. Do you want to start?
I will have to go in 5 minutes, so no.
Okay. We can switch to the second topic for now, and then we can go back to that one if it makes sense. So I have the second topic. It's about versioning policy. So let me share my screen. There are some new questions, or maybe not new, but not reflected in the documentation about versioning and backward compatibility. So I added a couple new ones. So those are related to translatable phrases and database changes. Don't have Anton copy, unfortunately, for database changes to review, but let's discuss. So for translatable phrases, in the backward compatibility guideline, we already had an item that we should not modify translatable phrase. I also added modify or add any translatable phrase, and I updated code base changes. Let me see. So it is a table. Yeah, so just to remind you what this document looks like. So I added messages section. Correct. So it should go like this. Engine change goes to database. Yep. So messages, translatable phrase modified or added, it's a major change, and phrase removed, it's a patch change. Some explanation to this is why it's major change, because as soon as somebody adds or modifies existing translatable phrase, meaning the key for the translation, it will lead to untranslated phrase in the production store for the merchant. So it should be visible from the version change that something happened and that they need to update translations. So that's why I think both adding and modification is a major change. Again, in minor Magento releases, we probably can go and update the phrases. So it's more expected. In patch releases, ideally not, but we will be discussing, depending on the situation, what will be a bigger impact. But at least it will be reflected in the module version, so merchants can review what they have. Another opinion may be that this will cause incompatibility with extensions, which is not good. So I don't know. Let's discuss what other opinions exist on this. Any opinions?
From my point of view, major is too strict.
And what?
Because I propose to be not major but minor, because all functionality will work, and for most people who at least understand English, it's okay to see the phrase but without translate.
Okay, so for me, minor means either backwards compatible change or SPI, change in SPI. So changes in extension points. It's not an extension point, and it's not backwards compatible from the functionality perspective. That's why I put it as major. I agree that
I believe our backward compatibility policy not about functionality. It's about code compatibility or API compatibility. Because any changes change functionality in any case.
A new phrase doesn't break code, but
yes,
it will show English, and they might not be aware that it has to be translatable.
No, I think version should reflect both functional and technical change, not only technical change. It's not only about having fatal error on the website. It's about any change.
Is adding a new one breaking though? Like if we're talking about like, you know, if we were talking about front end stuff just as a way to compare, like there's the whole concept of progressive enhancement, right? Where there's a clear distinction between something works, but maybe it's not 100% the ideal world versus something straight up breaks. And if something doesn't prevent a shopper from going through any of the scenarios they're supposed to go through, it seems like making something breaking for something that doesn't break any scenarios is overused.
And also, often we have use cases when new phrases are added for exceptions. At least from what I can see in the latest patch releases, we don't usually add it for new functionality, but for exception messages, which I think is less severe than, let's say, adding it for...
Why do we even have it for exceptions? Do we need to
because people introduce new exceptions and they want to create better message. They want to create...
yes, but why do you translate? Why do you translate exception messages?
Why not? I mean, you have localized exception which is supposed to be shown on storefront.
Validation messages are the common cause for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think messages that are shown to the user, yes, for exceptions, it's questionable how we handle it, especially with this localized exception. But yeah, it's probably a topic for
Should we maybe separate these two use cases? One use case for new functionality and positive flow, which may be major because users will see untranslated phrase in normal flow. And second is exceptional case, which may be less severe.
Can you explain why once again the difference? What means less severe?
So let's assume you add a new phrase to item successfully added to cart. So you change this message somehow. Means that every user on the website will see untranslated phrase in positive scenario. In case you modify phrase related to some exception, it will only affect users which do something incorrectly or some validation errors. So in my opinion, this is much less severe.
So what do you propose? Major version for positive scenario and minor version for negative scenario?
Yes. Like minor for exception translations.
So in our case, it prevented us to build a better API on the GraphQL coverage because we couldn't introduce new phrases. And those phrases were intended for the consumption of the front end, while API had very limited entity does not there or something like that. And we couldn't provide a better messages because, you know, those were major changes.
Okay, so as I understand, nobody thinks that it should be a patch change, right? But majority of us thinks that it should be a minor change. Is it correct understanding?
So what is the workaround then for, say, a bug fix where you have to introduce new validation or something and there's no existing validation messages that would be suitable?
discuss with product owner and with everybody, like with managers, with architects, and just raise major or minor version, but release it in patch Magento release. So versioning is for community, for extension and customization developers to know that something changed. Right, for us, we can have a discussion and decide what will be a better approach. Introduce a major minor change or preserve old not good functionality. So, okay, my understanding is that most of us think that it's better to have minor version change for the phrases. Let me maybe collect more feedback from the community on this. If no objections will be found, then we can make it minor. Okay.
Can you also explain why the removal of a translation is only a patch?
Because I don't think somebody should be relying on. So, for example, checkout should not rely on catalogs text on the phrase. So if you remove it, it means you probably remove the functionality. So removal of the phrase itself is not a breaking change. Most likely removal of the functionality will be a breaking change. So it will cause breaking, major or minor increase anyways. In another case, if, for example, there is a phrase which is not used anywhere by some reason, like by a mistake, if you remove it, it will not impact anybody. It's like I consider the phrase itself is being a private code. Nobody should rely on it. Maybe it's wrong, I don't know. But if you introduce new text, for me it's a problem that it will be visible as untranslated text on the final product.
Makes sense.
Okay, I'll add explanation about the patch. Another part of this pull request is about database changes, and here I really need some feedback as well. So it's about databases. So we had temporary tables added, removed, changed. It was not clear whether it's about like real MySQL temporary tables or about some tables that, as I understand, we have, which are not like really temporary tables, but they are used as temporary tables. So I added some clarification here that it doesn't, like it's for any table that is considered temporary. But another big addition is engine change. I'm not sure what version should be raised here. I put major, but I'll need some feedback, probably what are the opinions about engine change.
You know, in Magento we have functionalities that the model is the change schema of engine for a big number of times dynamically. So actually enable any some modules will be like engine will change engine and major breaking. Why I understood
like
why
they change during upgrade, or they like when do they change the engine?
Yes.
What scenario?
During upgrade.
Okay, so yeah, the question whether it's a breaking change or not.
I don't think it's breaking change. Why someone depends on engine change? I believe the problem only if some incompatibility between engines. For example, some engines do not support transaction. In this case, it will be breaking, but it depends.
Okay, so what do we put? Should we specify specific transitions between different engines, or what do we do? Okay, I'll just postpone this question. I want to discuss with Anton Kaplan right now. Because I agree, it depends on the engine, but we need to put some simple rule here, but which will be reasonable. Okay, I guess that's all. I have some feedback. I'll update the pull request and we'll proceed from that. Okay, do we have Daniel now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we have a proposal to add a new configuration for a list of whitelisted domains because so we were implementing payment methods for PayPal in GraphQL, and we're trying to implement it in a way where the front end and back end application can be decoupled. And in that scenario, it was brought up that there could be the potential that they're on different domains. So the redirect redirects the front end, and currently all the logic for like where to redirect it is in the back end. So basically we need to accept from the front end application a URL to redirect after a payment is successful or errored or anything. And to secure that, we're going to introduce this new list of domains that we can validate the input URLs against. Oh, I guess I should share my screen and bring it up. And you see, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's not showing in my booth. So there's been discussion about where exactly the configuration should live. Originally, we suggested in env.php, thinking it's a more secure area since it's only editable. Like if you can edit the file or run a CLI command. Alex suggested it just being in the regular store configuration. So I think that could still be up for discussion. It doesn't impact the overall idea too much. And then there was more discussion about whether or not it's even feasible to have a front-end application and the back-end application on different domains. I think maybe Andrew or Eugene are able to talk to that more.
Yeah, there was my comment was just about the fact that it seems like we're doing this work now for like the when or the if that someone runs the GraphQL API on a separate host name or host port protocol combo. And the problem with that is with Magento today in the state of web browsers in 2019, you can't do that. The only way that you'd be able to run the GraphQL API on a separate host name would be switching to token based off instead of cookie based off. And it sounds from talking with Yevon that that might be a far future type thing. So I'm not necessarily trying to say we shouldn't do this. I want to make sure that we, proposal is one thing versus like implementation is another thing. So like this work makes sense coupled with, if at some point in the future we do that. I just wanted to bring up that this might be something that it could end up making security looser if we don't actually need the feature in the future. So I just wanted to make sure to raise that point. Because if we're like, if we're 3 or 4 years away from being able to do token off with the API, then we're a far ways away from this being able to be usable by people.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the same concerns.
So even it's not only about different domains. It's also about different URLs because, for example, like the original example was related to the payment integration, and backend doesn't know about the URL, which URLs should be used for redirection. Only front end knows about it. So, and front end somehow should provide these URLs in secure way. Actually, the instances could be on the same domain, but the URLs can be different. And somehow we need to solve this problem.
So for now, does it make sense to just limit the user supplied URL to the root and use the like Andrew suggests, use the scheme
Do you guys
host
have
and
a
port from
visualized example of this problem?
not a good visual of it.
The problem is that if we already released the payment, if we don't do something about it, we have to revert all of them by 233. I think that's the case on this proposal.
Or limit the URL input to just the root and use the host name as configured in
Yeah,
Magento.
so we have to do something about it.
Gotcha. So my personal opinion is that we should go with whatever permits the least amount of variable URLs in there until we have a use case that we know can be actually like utilized for it, right? So personally, I'd be for. I can't say I necessarily understand what or if there'd be a difference between base URL and the host port protocol that the API is called under. But yeah, my own personal opinion would be that until we have a use case where we know that the front end could functionally be under a different host name, that we'd want to just pin it to the single thing we know would be used. But that's, obviously an opinion and up for discussion.
Okay, let's see what happens if we implement that, and then, I don't know, in some time we'll need to still go with some whitelisting, or we need to support other domains. I think we can add it in pretty backward compatible way, right? So we will add it as a new feature, and still if no domain is provided or no URL in whitelist is provided, we can fall back to the current domain of GraphQL, right? Like to the URL of backend.
So you're saying limit the input to not include like a domain, to not allow it to redirect to other domains? And if in the future we have that as a viable setup, we can add that type of functionality?
Yes. I'm just thinking
Okay.
how problematic it will be to add this functionality in future, and for me it seems it shouldn't be a big problem.
It seems like it'd only be additive, so.
Yeah,
Maybe.
so I agree with Andrew. If we don't have real use case right now, maybe let's just limit it. It will be more limited, so it should be more secure probably than adding more options. So. And probably easier to implement now.
Yeah, seems fair
Sorry,
to me.
I have a question. How actually right now, for example, PWA will specify the domain if we have only one place for domains admin configuration?
So I guess we'll use the same domain as as the backend. The backend will use its own domain.
So GraphQL will compare the domains and will resolve these URLs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only question is that you mentioned it doesn't know which like URLs paths are allowed. I don't know if it's a big problem or not.
If the same domain, then it shouldn't be a problem because like it will be anyway redirected to something that Magento knows or doesn't know.
There is one problem I just realized that we're gonna have with this, but I don't want to take up too much of the call time with it, so I'll come find Daniel afterwards, and then we'll talk it out and get the ticket updated. We're probably gonna have to talk to the PWA folks a bit.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, I'll add a note. Do we have anything else to discuss for today? If not, I think we are done, and hopefully we'll have a room and we'll have normal link to the blue jeans next time. Thanks all. See you.
Thanks.